everybody, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated it is, regardless of if you are a left person or a right person or something in the middle or something on the outskirts. Everybody is welcome here, and no such thing as a dumb question. So, yeah, if there's anything you've always wanted to know or ask about politics, but you've never had a place where you can ask those questions. You can ask them here, and there won't be any fighting or judgment or roasting or debating. I do not believe in making people feel stupid for trying to learn new things. I don't believe in debating. I don't believe in fighting. So I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. What's up, JP? Great to see you again. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are Republican, Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. This is not a show for fighting. This is not a show for debating. I don't think the debates are productive, so I just answer questions. And if you're here to fight, you can go to a different live stream. Yeah, I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language because it's all these weird abbreviations and last names and words that just get bandied about, like reconciliation and clean CR and things like that. And if you don't know what those words mean, it can be really difficult to be part of the conversation. Also, there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda out there. And so, you can ask questions here and we can all figure out together what's real news and what's not real news. So, ask your questions. Good faith questions will be given good faith answers. Everybody is welcome here. There's no fighting, there's no debating. Maybe there's a question you've always wanted to ask, but you were worried that it made you sound like a MAGA person. You can ask that question here. There's no judgments whatsoever. Lily says, "What's your most strong belief? Something you feel strongly about?" I guess the rich have too much and the poor have too little. That's probably a good one, or at least it is today, because I just heard that clip of Trump saying that your children don't need $37, and it just really fucking got to me, because it's like, number one, that's not what we're asking for. We are not asking for unlimited dolls. We're asking for cancer research. And you're telling us that that's too much. You're telling us that our fucking avocado toast and doll addiction is the reason why people are struggling. And it's fucking bullshit. But also, this is coming from a dude who takes a shit on a golden toilet. Like, if anybody has $37, it's fucking you, man. So yeah, fucking stop blaming the 99% for problems that are caused by the top 0.1%. Millie May says, "From the man who eats off of real gold plates, 100%. Shamalama Ding Dong, I don't know if that's a great idea. Also, I can't talk about that stuff on the live stream, or my channel gets reported for adult themes or whatever. But excellent first question so far. Thank you for being here, everybody. Jamal for Gay Thought says, "I'm confused about the dolls thing." So Trump is trying to message around affordability right now. And what he's basically saying is that you don't need 37 dolls. You don't need 100 pencils. He's telling Americans to go without. He's telling them to ration while he is flying around on private jets with tech billionaires who eat caviar and cocaine 3 meals a day. Like, it's fucking disgusting. Oh, Dilly Pickles says, "Are you Republican or a Democrat?" I am a Democrat. Lily says, "Who's your favorite president in history?" I don't know enough about American history to comment on that. I don't know too much about his presidency, but I like Jimmy Carter. He seems like a pretty good dude. He's just spent his entire post-presidency building houses for people to live in. Seems like a pretty good guy to me. All right, Just Ruin Your Day says, "How much time do you think we have left before we reach a 1930s, 1940s tipping point?" So I don't think it has to do with how much time goes by. I think it has to do with how many people are working to keep that from happening. And so long as good people like you and me do the work of keeping that from happening, then it won't happen ever. Trump and the Republican Party will continue to try to make it happen, but they will fail if good people like you and me do the work. Scott says, "Do you believe Israel is committing a genocide?" So I do, but it also doesn't matter if I do, because the UN has said so, the ICC has said so, international organizations within Israel are saying so. So it's happening. It is that. End of story. Millie May says, "Do you agree with James Carville's thoughts on Trump?" I don't know which ones you are referring to, but I have issues with James Carville. I have issues with anybody who seems to be stuck in the political past. I don't know if James Carville is up to speed with what is going on in politics these days. He's a very entertaining person to watch talk. Apparently, he was a real political genius during the Clinton administration. I just don't know if he has any, any real substantive hot takes for this political moment, being, a an old person. What's up, Kingston? Good to see you again. Millie May says Carville said that Trump is done. I mean, it's not looking good for Trump and the Republican Party. They are historically unpopular, and it seems like it is continuing to trend in that direction. There's still about a year left before the midterms, and there's a solid 3 years left before he leaves office. He still has a lot of power. He can still fuck up our lives in big ways. And so the fight continues. Okay, John Laucucci says socialism sucks and has never worked anywhere. That's not a question, John. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Let's see here. John Abbott says Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mace are trying to get the 9 Republicans needed to force a vote to remove Johnson as the speaker. If they can get the 9, do you think it might actually pass? If so, do you think removing him would actually be a net positive, or that replacing him would just give his replacement a clean slate? That's a really good question, John. So I tend not to truck in predictions. I think it's probably unlikely that they remove Johnson. I think Trump likes Johnson because he toes the party line. I just don't see it happening. I think it's a good effort, and I think they should try to do it. I just don't see the majority of Republicans doing it. But if they remove him, I think that would be a net benefit, because we are showing that there is accountability for people that just go out there and lie to the American people and carry water for the Trump administration. But yeah, will we probably get a bigger piece of shit than him in replacement? Probably, but then we have set up a precedent of getting rid of pieces of shit. So hopefully, let's see here. Back into these TikTok comments. Oni Wandering says, a politician lying, say it isn't so. Ani, I appreciate that comment, but I will say that when we paint all politicians as liars or say they're all corrupt and shit like that, we're giving cover for the worst ones. So why don't we hold them to a higher standard? We have this impossibly high standard that we set for the Democratic Party, but when anybody ever says anything negative about a Republican politician, people go, they're all like that. Doesn't seem like a great model for me. Moore says Dems are going to sweep the midterms. I appreciate that positivity, Moore, but the game is not over, man. We still have a ton of work to do to make that happen. The Republican Party and the Trump administration are going to do whatever they can to try to rob, cheat, and steal their way into a midterm victory. They're going to do voter suppression. They're going to use ICE. They're going to potentially use the military. So we have to be prepared, and we have to keep on doing the work. The best way to make sure that their things that they do not equal electoral victory is to make it so that the things that they do are ineffectual, because everybody is on board with voting them out of office. All right, Millie May says, thoughts on Kushner with the help of the Saudis to purchase CNN? I mean, the conflicts of interest and the corruption in this administration is just fucking unbelievable, man. Corporate ownership of the mainstream media is part of the reason why we are here today, where the profit motive is more important than actually delivering substantive and balanced news to people. Additionally, it opens the door for foreign ownership of our media markets, and that doesn't seem like a good thing. Like, why is it that a country that is potentially hostile to American interests is going to be the one deciding what news gets shown in front of us? Do we really think that the president's son-in-law is going to be an arbiter of objective reality? I do not believe so. And thank you, Shawnee Flytrap and Juggernaut, for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. And thank you for that compliment, Moore. I really appreciate that. Short says, do you think platforming Fuentes in any way works? I'm kind of on both sides of the platforming argument. Like, I do recognize that, the way that ideas work in the internet age is a little bit like the way that diseases spread, where before the internet, if you were a crazy person in a small town or in a big city, you would never be able to find enough people that agree with you to actually be a threat to, national security, for example. It's the same way that diseases spread. Like, you need to have vulnerable people near you so that they can catch whatever you have. With the internet, these ideas are able to be piped directly to the people who are susceptible to them. So I see the danger of platforming people like Nick Fuentes, but there's also the sunlight is the best disinfectant argument, where the more people that are aware that this person exists and is radicalizing people, the more that we can educate the people that we know. Like, this is a person not to be trusted, and make sure that the people that we know and love are not being swept up in that, right-wing propaganda rabbit hole. Honestly, I don't know where the line is. I think that I think best case scenario, we kind of have to treat it in a case by case basis. I think that we need to be putting pressure on corporations to make it so that it is not profitable for them to have these people on their platforms. That seems to me to be the way that we handle this moment right now. Sav says, why isn't the ICC involved with the double tapping situation? It's possible that they're currently investigating it, but I believe that those investigations take time. I haven't heard any reporting that they're like hands off on it. Also, I would say that America doesn't really recognize the authority of the ICC, so it would have limited effect, shall we say. LJ Up says Biden is incredibly sharp. I don't know what you mean by that. I am not out here advocating for Joe Biden. Okay, Kingston, good to see you as well. Did you hear France is considering going after Musk because of election interference? If France were to do this to hold him accountable, would it hurt Trump at all? I don't think it would immediately hurt Trump, but I do think that, anywhere that the project of authoritarianism fails is bad for authoritarians everywhere. It's the reason why, people like Vladimir Putin want to have their hands in every single election so they can get more Donald Trumps in charge of Germany, Italy, France, Portugal, Spain, etc. And so limiting the ability of people that are fascist curious, or, just like full on fascist, means that those elections have the ability to be safer and better. And therefore, we're not going to be able to install, Putin puppets into more, democracies. Okay, Education Rock says, can Henry Cavill's Harry Pex reunite America? Potentially. Sav says, what's your opinion on Indiana rejecting Trump's request to redistrict? I'm really happy that it happened. I don't know. I never put money on Republican politicians doing the right thing, and so I'm just stunned that sometimes they do. Because I believe that the state government of Indiana is under Republican control. So what is the issue with them doing it? I don't know. I haven't heard their reasons. But yeah, I'm happy that it happened. Just Ruin Your Day says, much of this was clear to me in 2014. How is it best to hold blue accountable without being too pure? That is an excellent question. Just Ruined Your Day. So the first thing I want to say is that not voting is not the answer. A lot of people will tell you that you need to not vote because not voting will teach these Democrats to be better. And that we just have not seen that borne out at any time in history. Moreover, America already has really shitty voter participation. And so if not voting worked, it would have worked already. Same with trickle-down economics. If it worked, it would have worked already. I think the best way is, number one, political pressure, obviously. And number two is primaries. Beating them in the primary. People often talk about forcing Democrats to lose elections to teach them a lesson, but the lesson that they learn from that is not to be what you want them to be. They take all sorts of different lessons from that. Sometimes they go further to the right because they lose elections. I think we need to start thinking about the value of winning Democrats' elections. Like, what do they learn when they give us the Affordable Care Act, which saved people's lives, and then we reward them by giving Congress to the Republican Party? What is a message that sends to the Democratic Party? That we don't like it when you do things that help us. So think about the value of winning Democrats' elections against the Republican Party. What message does that send? Especially when you have people doing progressive shit, like the Biden administration was arguably the most progressive administration we've had since FDR. And we rewarded the Democrats for doing all that great shit, for Alina Khan breaking up monopolies, for the NLRB siding with the unions, for capping the cost of insulin and asthma inhalers, for the first bipartisan infrastructure bill. We told the Democratic Party, get the fuck out of town, man. Fuck you guys. We hate you. After you did all that good stuff for us, you know? So yeah, that's just something that popped into my noodle right now. So, you know, we'll see what anybody thinks about that. Pork Egg Roll says the Affordable Care Act made my insurance and healthcare ridiculously unaffordable. So Pork Egg Roll, it is true that the Affordable Care Act was not perfect and some people got hosed on that. But there are a couple of really important things to keep in mind. Number one, the Affordable Care Act made it so that people could not be denied healthcare for pre-existing conditions, and that saved lives. The insurance companies decided to raise healthcare costs off of that fact, off of the fact that they can no longer have millions or billions of dollars in profits because they're going to have to treat people who have cancer. Oh, those poor fucking billionaires are having to treat people with cancer, man. But what we have seen is that the longer that the Affordable Care Act has been in existence, the more the affordability has continued making its way through to everybody else. I just listened to a great podcast episode on this dude who is an expert on this pork egg roll. So if you want me to send you that, I will. Just send me a DM and I'll happily forward that over to you. I know that's probably not going to make it feel any better that you have to pay more for healthcare either then or now. But better is better and worse is worse. And without the Affordable Care Act, everybody's healthcare coverage is going to skyrocket in January. So, maybe the Affordable Care Act made it so that your healthcare was a little bit more expensive, but it is generally less expensive for everybody, and everybody gets treatment now, which is better for everybody too. Shawnee Flytrap and Muzzking, thank you for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Very much appreciate that. Okay, Honolulu Girl says, can you send it over to me? I do have oh, I'm really sorry to hear that, Honolulu Girl. Yeah, if you send me a DM, I will send it over to you. I cannot just remember to send everybody things while I'm doing the live stream. Okay. Tom says, should healthcare be universal? 100% it should be universal. Absolutely, without question. The bureaucracy of, the private healthcare industry, the middlemen, the profit margins, the profit motive, all of that makes healthcare more expensive and worse. And so if you have ever been on the short end of the needing prior authorization and a double authorized X57 form that is faxed to both your pharmacist and your doctor and your insurance company, oh, your primary care doctor is listed differently on a different form, so now you have to start over, then you know why universal healthcare is the move. Cheaper, better, no red tape, or at least less red tape, abso-fucking-lutely. John Lacucci says, how does universal healthcare make it better when people die from doctor waits? You're saying that as though doctor waits don't exist in private healthcare, John Lacucci, and I am somebody who has suffered from that. I am somebody who has waited months and months and months to get care, only to then be told that my insurance doesn't cover that care. So, I'll fucking take it, man. I'll fucking take cheaper and better, knowing that the waits are basically going to be the same. Okay, Jody says, how is Canada doing with all care waiting over a month to get an MRI? Again, Jody, you are acting like there is not waits for MRIs here in America. Okay, John Lacucci says 2 years to get a physical isn't efficient. All right, yes, and also there are long waits here in America as well. In America, you are also waiting, and you are paying more, and you are dealing with more hassle, and the quality of your care is worse. So I just don't understand where the fucking disconnect is here, guys. It almost seems like you have this agenda to push this idea instead of actually listening to the things that I'm saying. Shawnee Flytrap and Just Ruined Your Day. Thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. Okay, let's see here. Jody says, I had my MRI within 2 weeks. I'm really happy to hear that, Jody, but that is not everybody's experience, unfortunately. Okay, where are we going next? Where's my little finger hearts? I like the finger hearts next. Here we go. Alrighty. Um, Tom says, what other parties would you like in addition to Republicans and Democrats? I mean, I like the Working Families Party. I think that's the only, one independent political party that is doing it the right way and trying to build the kind of national support to actually win elections. But yeah, if we really need other political parties, let's have a centrist Democrats, and then we'll have a progressive Democrat Party. Let's have a centrist Republican Party and a MAGA Republican Party. Honolulu Girl says, I went to the ER for a blood transfusion and got an MRI that day. I'm really glad to hear that, Honolulu Girl. But again, that's not everybody's experience in America. Jody says, that's the Republican Party you're talking about. I don't know what that means, Jody. John Lacucci says, and how do you get R&D when there is no money for it in universal healthcare? There's money for R&D in universal healthcare. Mama Ruby says, emergent MRIs happen in Canada. Emergency care doesn't have the weights. All right, sweet. Bradley says, why are everyone for Israel instead of the lobbyist? I don't know what that means, Bradley. Gregory Langford says, why not libertarian? So a couple of reasons. Number one, every place that has tried libertarianism has failed. In America, we have cities and towns that have tried libertarianism, and the best case scenario is the town got overtaken by bears. And so it doesn't really work. Also, if just on a personal level, I see the value of the government in the fact that we have paved roads, public education, fire departments, etc. But also, if you read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer, take a shot, bingo card, whatever, you discover that the entire Libertarian Party is an astroturfed political organization created by the billionaire class to convince people to get rid of the government so that they can become richer. It's fucking bullshit. Okay, let's see here. Chris says liberals tried to build a colony in New Hampshire and failed, and trash was all over their city. I think you mean libertarians, right, Chris? Somersault says, how do you feel about defunding the fire department? Everyone has a sink, so they're kind of out of date. I think you're being sarcastic, Somersaults. Okay, Sam says libertarianism is working in South Africa. I do not believe that. Enzo says, I'm going to ask you a very political question. What's your opinion on carne asada fries? Sounds delicious. All right, John Abbott says, for the people asking, what about long wait times? Have you ever asked yourself, what about the people who die here because they can't get those treatments at all? That is a really good point, John Abbott. Yeah. So not only do we also have wait times, but there are people who cannot afford healthcare who then just fucking die. And I think that that is a barbaric and unconscionable system to be living in. And so if it adds a week to my wait for something, for everybody else to have healthcare, then absolutely, let's do it. If I'm going to be paying a certain amount of money every year for health insurance, either through private or through taxes, I would much rather it be taxes, because then every one of my dollars is going to making sure that my fellow Americans get health insurance instead of it going into some fucking rich guy's yacht fund or his fucking, Swiss bank accounts who doesn't fucking pay taxes on it. Okay. This guy says, I bet you love big black cock like all sissy liberal males. What a weird thing to say to the dude that was just fucking your mom. John Lacucci says, who wants to spend $500K to be a doctor and make a government salary? Nobody. Just because universal health care does not mean doctor no make lots of money anymore. Also, potentially, it would decrease the cost of getting a medical degree, John Lacucci. Sam says, no, they don't. You're spreading straight bullshit. The ER cannot turn anyone away legally. Sam, that is inaccurate. In fact, the Trump administration is currently suing to make it so that emergency rooms can deny care to people. Additionally, having everybody's primary care be the emergency room is extremely expensive and inefficient. It is way cheaper to do preventative medicine than to just wait until people can get seen at the emergency room. Enzo says, what do you think of progressive? You think it's good or bad or fair? I think it's fair. Yeah, I would ask what you mean by progressive, but I'm generally for both the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and progressive tax structures. Okay, Ali Yen says, what is up with your chat today? What's with all the MAGA crazies? It's every day, Ali. That's just the way it is. Orthodox Infant sends centrist thoughts. I'm not really sure what your question is. Short says, what do you think of the deregulation of gambling platforms? That's a difficult one. I don't know how valuable it is to restrict access to gambling, but I also see that unfettered access to gambling enables access to people who have a problem with gambling. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to solve that problem. It's like, it's fun to go to Vegas and play craps, but then somebody loses their entire fucking house because they don't know when to say when. It's like, I don't know. I don't know how to solve that problem, unfortunately. So sorry about that. Oh, John G. Fishman says most gambling hurts the poor. That is how I feel 100%, but I don't know what the solution to that is. Are we going to try to make gambling illegal? Like, does that seem like a system that works? I'm genuinely asking. I'm not saying it like we tried it and it didn't work. I'm saying like show me the model. Okay, let's see here. Key says, will Trump get the 25th Amendment? I think unlikely. In order for the 25th Amendment to go into effect, I believe you would need his cabinet on board, and I think his cabinet is down with what he's doing. D. Scott and Dan Blackroyd, thank you so much for helping me reach my 4th gift goal of the day. John Lacucci says, you think healthcare is expensive now? Wait until it's free. Are you sarcastic? That sounds like you're being sarcastic, my guy. Alrighty. Let's see here. Jiu-Jitsu J Flow says, what level of dementia did Biden have when you voted for him? I mean, he seemed pretty with it when he was running in 2020. It is true that he is an old person who definitely started showing his age. And if you read Jake Tapper's book, it's clear that the problem was a lot worse than Biden's team and his family were letting us all know about. But to that question, I would also say, what level of dementia did Donald Trump have when you voted for him? What level of corruption did he have when you voted for him? What level of racism did he have when you voted for him? What level of him not giving a shit about the people that voted for him suffering under inflated costs did you vote for him? Orthodox Infant says, do you think birthright citizenship is being abused? No, I do not. Grain says, how do you manage drastically lowering house prices with people being underwater on their mortgage? If you talk to people that deal in housing policy, they will tell you that supply is the problem. And so not only do we need to be incentivizing, the building of new properties, but we should potentially also be subsidizing it. We should be having government housing potentially. So yeah, more housing will lower the costs. Ooh, Clyde McFerrin says, I'll vote for him again. Who? Tracy says, dude, LOL, inflation is down since Biden. That is inaccurate, Tracy. It is actually up since Biden. Okay. Short says, you think Trump's mental acuity is as bad as Biden's, but in different ways? No, I mean, Trump still has those press conferences where he's, bobbing and weaving and, just like spitting, The things he's saying are fucking psychotic, but he does not seem as old as Biden did. Even in 2020, he does not seem that old. So yeah, I am not here to tell you who wins in a dementia off. I'm just saying that Biden was a better president and he was enfeebled. So let's see here. Josh Serro says, to conservatives in the comments, I'm in Canada. I got a specialist referrals and seen within a few weeks for most health issues. The issue with Canadian healthcare is that conservatives are defunding it in an effort to get us to private healthcare. It's not a good thing. Folks are dying more. Josh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. What do you call it? Thank you for that insight. And John Abbott, what do you mean it's over 9,000? What are we talking about? What's over 9,000? I forget what we were talking about. That could be a comment about. Enzo says, honestly, I don't get why people think healthcare is a privilege when it's a right. It's a human right. I agree with that. Brando says, is it okay to cut my friends off because they like Trump? So, Brando, I would say two things about that. Number one, it is okay. You are allowed to remove toxic people from your life. But number two, if you are up to it, I would encourage you to try to pull those people out of MAGA. And it's difficult. It takes a lot of time and energy and listening and empathy. But if you read a book called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas, he talks about like how that process works out. I cut off family members because they're MAGA, and I honestly kind of regret it just because now I have no value to them as somebody to try to convince them to do something better with their vote or try to bring them into the reality of what's going on in the country. So I'm not going to tell you that you have to maintain those relationships, but I would say that if you're up for it, you probably have a better chance of convincing that person to not be MAGA than somebody like me who's a total fucking stranger. BB says you're not going to convince most of them anyway. Yeah, that's true, but we're not trying to turn MAGA people into AOC people. We're just trying to get MAGA people to at least recognize a shared reality. Like, can we agree that prices are up? Can we agree that we should not be starting a regime change war in Venezuela? Can we agree that what ICE is doing is barbaric and inhumane and not solving the problem? Like, there are places where we can find, agreement, and then we can build on that. Okay, Ricardo Barrera says Trump 2028. That is not a question, so you are out of here. Also, I fucked your mom. Princess Joy says, I thought the left side was supposed to be tolerant and accepting of everyone. So Princess Joy, that's a paradox. We call it the tolerance paradox, where if you're supposedly tolerant, does that mean that you have to be tolerant of intolerance? Like, do I need to accept a schnazi or a racist or a misogynist into my coalition just because I'm supposed to be tolerant? But I believe that we are allowed to be intolerant of intolerance and still be tolerant ourselves. Delano says, thoughts on any strategy for hampering fascistic sentiment without a Streisand effect? Interesting. Without a Streisand effect. I don't believe that you do more damage than not damage by discussing what the government is doing as fascist. I think what you mean by that, Delano, is you're saying, like, are we calling more attention to these radical ideologies and therefore doing free advertising for them? And I don't think that that's the case. I think the reason why the fascist movement and extreme right-wing ideology is so popular right now in America is because we've kind of like assumed that people get it. We're like, have you seen any Indiana Jones movies? The Nazis are the bad guy. End of argument, right? But the kind of Nazi adjacent fascist propaganda that is really effective these days is effective because it's insidious and because it is kind of operating under the radar and it's taking us by surprise. So I tend to come down on the let's shine a light on this problem as opposed to, trying to suffocate it by not giving it any oxygen. I could be wrong about that, but that's just, where I come down. That is just my opinion, I would say. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says over 9,000 is a Dragon Ball Z meme. Really interesting. JP says, it is so weird that a dementia off could help decide an American election. That is funny. John Abbott says, you were asking about the level of Trump's corruption and racism when people voted for him. Yes, that is accurate. JP says, I thought, wow, no mom comments that time. Jared Holtmaybe. And thank you very much to everybody who helped me reach my fourth gift goal of the day. I think it was the fifth one, wasn't it? Let's see here. BB says, as a therapist, I actually think often strangers can be more convincing than friends and family. Oh, that's really interesting. BB, I guess I get the idea there. I don't know. I just think that I've seen it happen so many times where somebody gets written off as, oh, well, you're just a Trump hater, or you're just a rhino, or oh, you're just a professor, and everybody knows that professors are liberal stooges, and oh, you just watch CNN, and that's the reason why you're saying this shit, So I think that when you know somebody, they have a little bit more. They have their ability to write you off is maybe a little bit less, but that's just kind of me shooting from the hip. And I mean, that's also in the book Persuaders, which that's a pretty well sourced and resourced book. So I would kind of trust that as a thing, but I could be wrong about that. Bronson Brager says, thoughts on the Israel lobby. So there are a lot of problems with the Israel lobby. Not the least of which being that lobbying itself is bad. So, like, excuse me. Oh my goodness, how rude. So I have, exactly as much of a problem with APAC as I have with, the Heritage, Foundation and the Federalist Society and shit like that. Israel, very specifically, is the subject of a lot of very appropriate criticism because of the way that the Netanyahu government is doing war crimes and genocide against the people of Palestine. But yeah, all lobbying by billionaires is toxic to our government and to our world. Enzo says, hear me out. You shouldn't be allowed to lobby the government. It creates corruption and inequality. I agree with that. We should have a mechanism by which experts can talk to people in the government so that they can get a objective read on industries that they're not experts in. But 100% the lobbying industry is, toxic and a vehicle for corruption and has been for a while. Sex Lord Freddy says, what is the point of voting when all it's gotten normal Americans is minor improvements? Sex Lord Freddy, I would disagree with that because there are people who are suffering in ICE detention today, veterans and American citizens who have done nothing fucking wrong, who will 100% tell you that voting makes a difference. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act who will tell you that 100% voting makes a difference. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans in red states. And their families that now miss them, their children that miss them now, will tell you that 100% voting makes a difference. Okay, General Darwin, stop spamming the comments with that or I'm going to block you. 3GB says, did you hear Trump ask for immunity from the ICC? I did not hear about that. That is so fucking bananas because, like, we don't recognize the ICC. Like, why do you even think you need to do that? Jesus Christ. That guy's such a fucking idiot. John Lacucci says, the division between the two sides is too great for us to ever be united again. I completely disagree with that, John Lacucci. And in fact, I find that comment to be pretty fucking sus that you would say some shit like that, where you're arguing against universal health care. You're not listening to the things that I'm saying. You're not commenting on the things that I'm saying. You're just kind of like sweeping them all under the rug. And now you're trying to tell me that the division between the two sides is too great for us. So you're advocating for civil war, John? You're on my last fucking nerve. Just letting you know, man. You better ask a question in good faith or you're out of here. Biggie says, will AIPAC ever go away? It will if we vote for politicians that are down with the project of standing up to AIPAC and all lobbyist organizations. The reason why AIPAC and Heritage and Federalist are still operating is because people keep on getting tricked into voting for their politicians. There are politicians who have stood up to AIPAC who then lost their primary because of AIPAC money. What message do you think that is sending to the people that still have their jobs? They need to soft serve their criticism of AIPAC or not criticize them at all, or they will be in their targets. So that is us. That is up to us. We need to do that work of only electing politicians that are willing to stand up to AIPAC. And when we see that one politician is down with AIPAC and the other one isn't, we vote for the one that isn't. Because if the one that is wins, then you're just proving that AIPAC is using their money correctly. Okay, General Darwin, you are out of here as well. Congratulations. Also, I fucked your mom. Seaflon says, Jasmine Crockett is the prime example of what you were talking about. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Seaflon. Pedro de los Reyes says, do you think anti-Semitism is the worst problem in the country? No, I do not. It's a big problem, but it is not the worst problem. Pedro de los Reyes says, do you agree with the Senate condemnation? Which one are you referring to, Pedro? Alfie says, yeah, if you're down with AIPAC but have dumb policies, I'm still not voting for you. I don't know what that means, Alfie. Are you trying to say that if you're against AIPAC but also have dumb policies that you're not voting for those people? Because I think that's fine also, Pedro de los Reyes says, do you think anti-Semitism, I already did that one. Real Bendis says, do you think that only 4 black women have been elected to the Senate? Did you know? Do you think that? Yeah, my opinion. Anyway, sorry, I'm being silly. I did not know that only 4 black women have been elected to the Senate, and that's fucking gross. Enzo says, what prevents us from allowing universal health care? It would save millions of lives. Just politics, Enzo. All we need to do is elect people who will do universal health care. And we should be clear that transitioning America to a universal health care program will be difficult. It's not going to be easy. but we should still do it. It'll be cheaper in the long run. But yeah, people just got to stop voting for politicians that are not down with universal health care. And that starts with unelecting every single Republican, because Republicans are not just not down with universal health care. They want to make your health care even more expensive and inaccessible than it already is. Alfie says, I feel like the majority of APEC shills have decent policies and ones that don't are unrealistic. I could not disagree with you more on that, Alfie. I'm a progressive Democrat, and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is the one that is standing up to APEC, and they are also the ones, in my opinion, that have the best policy agendas. I don't believe that their policy agendas are unrealistic. I would happily discuss that in more detail with you if you like, Alfie. Thad Va says, I love for the government to be in charge of my healthcare. Thad Va, I would also. Uperlar says, do you believe other people besides the government have copies of the e-files? I'm pretty sure that that is accurate. I mean, do you count like the Southern District of New York as being part of the government? Because those are the people that I think have the other copy. But yeah, I don't know if there's any non-judiciary agencies, non-law enforcement agencies that have access to those files. Ooh, David07 says, what tax systems do you think we should use? A progressive tax system where you get taxed more depending on how much money you make. Alfie says, I think you guys in the US just need more than 2 parties. I'm from the UK and we have 5 contenders. Yeah, I am open to having more political parties, but we need ranked choice voting for that to be a thing. Otherwise, another party would just serve to be a spoiler candidate for someone else. Now or never says, are you an anti-capitalist? I'm not anti-capitalist, but I am capitalism critical. Like right now, we have too much capitalism in America. Like private healthcare is a fucking nightmare. Private colleges are a fucking nightmare. Private housing is a fucking nightmare because now look, it is unbelievably expensive. It is prohibitively expensive. So what do we do about this? I think we need a little less capitalism in this country. We already have some socialism and communism. Like maybe we just have a little bit more. Maybe that would help solve some of those problems. Mike Ames says, what is to stop Trump from pardoning anyone he's affiliated with and no one will see consequences? He has a lot of wiggle room to do shit like that. The things that will stop that are, number one, state charges, which you cannot pardon. And 2, we could potentially undo the pardon power, depending on who we elect next. Okay, Dave Redbeard Noble says, is it private or for profit that's the problem? I don't see the delineation there, Dave Redbeard. Is it not private healthcare that is for profits? Is it not private colleges and universities that are also for profits? I could be wrong about that. We're talking about semantics here, so please educate me. Okay, Benito Bowl says, do you think it's okay for undocumented kids going in front of a judge without representation? I do not, Benito. You sir need more coffee says, what the U.S. have spent on Israel and Argentina could have paid for universal health care. Is that true? You sir more coffee? That seems Israel and Argentina. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Enzo says, not all Republicans are bad, not all Democrats are good. It turned into more of an us versus them. I agree with that, Enzo, but I need to flip that a little bit because there's a difference between the voters and the politicians. The voters, I don't say that, Republican voters aren't bad, Democratic voters aren't good. We're all just people, and every human being is flawed. Everybody on both sides of the aisle is some degree of good and shitty. Where the politicians are concerned, I think it's a little bit more drastic of a difference. Like, I do think that Republican politicians are, on average, worse than Democratic politicians because even the best Republican politician is still advocating for trickle-down economics, and we know that that doesn't work, and it is hurting a lot of people. So yeah, Alfie says, I think the U.S. do need to have a high military spend, though, or smaller countries will get overrun. Maybe, but I also think the military needs more accountability because they have never passed an audit, and I think there's probably a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse in the military. Wax Nightmare says, Democrats are the enemy of the people, but Republicans are more dangerous. I disagree with that. People act like if Democrats won every election would be perfect. I don't think anybody's acting like that. Wax Nightmare says, but we've seen what that looks like in some states. Yeah, there are problems in Democratic-run states, but the quality of life is better in blue states. That's the reason why it's more expensive to live there, because more people want to live in those places. But yeah, Democrats are not the enemy of the people. I do not think that the party that is supporting unions is the enemy of the people. I do not think that the party that lowered healthcare costs and brought inflation from 9% to 2.4% and did the largest investment in renewable energy in our nation's history is the enemy of the people. I don't believe that the party that made it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions is the enemy of the people. MJV says, not perfect, but a whole new level of a lot better. That is accurate. Alfie says, 100% needs more oversight, but national, like Taiwan and the Soviet bloc, would fall. Maybe. James Quinlan says, did Gerald Ford make the right decision by pardoning Nixon? No. Sam Wilkes says, Republicans don't give a shit about America. That is accurate. Short says, at some point you have to ask why some voters are so comfortable with fascism. Short, I agree that there are people in the Republican base that suck. I completely agree with that. But I think most of them don't. I think most of them have been lied to. And, we all fall for bullshit sometimes. Okay, Jim G says, if Nixon is going to prison, we wouldn't be where we are now. Completely agree. Alfie says, no politicians give a shit about their country realistically. That is not true, Alfie. And when you say that, you give cover for the worst politicians. Jake McFunk says, do you think we'd have a worse relationship with the Middle East if we had a female president? No, I think we'd potentially have a better relationship with the Middle East with a female president. Marty the Giant Robot says, do you think treating politics like sport through short form content is corrosive to U.S. democracy? I think treating politics like sport through any kind of content is corrosive to U.S. democracy. That's the reason why I don't do debates, is because I think that it creates this idea that this is just a fun thing that people do, where I'm on one team and you're on another, and then we spar on the battlefield of ideas, as opposed to this having very real consequences for people's lives. There are people who are sitting in ICE detention right now who have done absolutely nothing wrong, who will tell you that, yeah, politics is not a sport. It's a real fucking thing. Alfie says, nah, they set out to do good, but are all corrupted by power eventually. Alfie, all right, Alfie, let me paint you a scenario here, okay? Let's say you're trying to decide between going on a date with two different people. One of them is just like a regular person, and the other person is a serial killer who has murdered everyone they have ever gone on a date with. And if I look at those two people and I go, it doesn't make a difference who you go on a date with. They're all the same. All those people, they're all the same, whether they're guys or girls, whatever it is. Who do you think that helps? Who is that better for? Is it better for the normal person or the serial killer? Let me know. Big Bic Energy says, bro, don't know about Bernie. I know all about Bernie. I canvass for Bernie. Fidel G FBG says, why can politicians have dual citizenship? Shouldn't that be considered a conflict of interest? I have no problem with the argument that politicians should not have dual citizenship. I will say that there is a little misinformation out there. Like, a lot of people believe that 80% of the government are dual Israeli citizens, and that's not true. But yeah, I have no problem with having some regulations around politicians having both of their feet firmly planted in America. Alvy says, it's not that simple, though. It's more like, would I rather go on a date with a murderer or a rapist? Wow, I could not disagree with you more on that, Alfie. And speaking as somebody who is an American, you do not have a full understanding of what American politics is like, being a UK person, if that is your attitude. If you think that that is the difference between Democrats and Republicans, no, absolutely not. False, you're wrong. And normally I don't go that hard against people that disagree with me, but you're not here, my guy. You have no fucking stake in American politics. Enzo says, what's your opinion on the E-files? I think Trump was scared to release them because he's in them. I think it is extremely likely that he is implicated in them in a way that will hurt him politically. We don't know anything for certain, but there is a ton of circumstantial evidence around it. And yeah, I mean, we also, there's a bunch of circumstantial evidence that shows that he has been trying to hide those files and trying to remove his name from those files. Alvy says, not Democrats and Republicans. They aren't one entity. It's about the prominent figures in the parties. No, it is though, Alfie. Like, different things happen when Democrats are in charge versus when Republicans are in charge. The politicians themselves are better on the Democratic side than the Republican side. You can think of exceptions to that rule, but on the average, it's just a fucking plain ass fact, my guy. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which was only possible because people voted for Democrats, and there are women who are dead because of abortion bans, which were only possible because people voted for Republicans. The Republican Party has repeatedly cut taxes for the billionaire class, and then they take money from the billionaires to help them win elections so they can cut taxes for billionaires more. And the Democratic Party walks with the fucking union. They are different. One is better, one is worse. They are different. Okay, don't get me wrong, the right-wing parties here are further left than your Democrats. That is also not true, Alfie. Honestly, man, you're starting to get my goat here. You know, you know what you sound like, Alfie? You sound like somebody who is trying to have credibility by being someone from the UK, looking at it from an outside perspective. Like, I am seeing things that you guys aren't, you know. But your rhetoric is to depress voter turnout and to convince people to not vote for Democrats. So, you know, sus as hell, in my opinion, Alfie. I peaked in 5th grade. Says, how damaging was it to the Democrats for embracing anti-police policies? So the Democrats didn't embrace anti-police policies. The Democrats embraced accountability for police policies. And I do think it was damaging because the rhetoric around the Democratic policies and BLM and defund the police was that the Democratic Party was anti-police. But like a lot of things, the rhetoric around the Democratic Party was inaccurate, unfair, and largely funded by billionaires who would much rather have Republicans in office so that they can become even richer, even if it means everybody's lives get fucking worse. Your mother's fave says Democrats have plenty of billionaire donors. Yes, that is true. Your mother's fave, but Republicans have more. 75% of all billionaire political donations went to Republican candidates in 2024. The system makes sense. Republicans cut taxes for billionaires. Billionaires use that extra money to get Republicans elected. So Republicans cut taxes for billionaires more. So billionaires use that money to get Republicans elected. Wash, rinse, repeat. Sophia, great to see you again. I will happily give you my opinion on gun control if you tell me that you read my last message to you and let me know what you think about it. Okay, your mother's favo says they also cut taxes for the rich and don't raise taxes after Republicans cut it. No, that is inaccurate to your mother's fave. It is true that no Democratic administration since Reagan has raised taxes on the rich as much as the previous Republican has cut them, but every Democrat has raised taxes on the rich. Clinton, Obama, Biden have all raised taxes on the rich. Not enough, in my opinion, but they have. Mysterio says, obviously you don't live in Hollywood. I mean, why would you say that, Mysterio? Lil Rizzo Official says, may I join because I have a long question? Maybe. Stick around, Lil. Alfie says, how many people have died because of the lax stance on violent crime in democratic cities? We do not have a lax stance on violent crime in democratic cities, Alfie. Honestly, that's your second strike, man. And one more piece of bullshit like that, Alfie, and you're out of here. Enzo says, you should become a political activist or a politician. I think you'd be good at it. I am an activist. I do a ton of volunteer work. I consider what I'm doing here to be activism. I don't know if I'd ever run for office. I think I can probably do more good here. Your mother's fave says they leave it lower than it was prior to Trump, even if it's raised. But good point. Thank you, your mother's fave. I appreciate you. I am also your mother's fave. Scott Clower says red states have the highest pew-pew homicide rates. That is accurate. Moms for Change says Republicans actually have higher rates of crime. Yes, but like there is some caveats and asterisks that you have to put on that, Mom for Change, but you are 100% right about that. Okay. Ooh, excuse me, everybody. Okay, let's see here. Misty Lane, great to see you again. Says voters aren't comfortable with fascism. Some voters would just rather free trade for safety. And you see that with the push for internet ID, fascism has no power without fear. without promising to make scary things go away. Fascism has zero power. That is 100% accurate, Misty Lane. So yes, we have another group of people who are not fully sucking, but are somewhere on the these people suck spectrum. You know, let's see here. John Abbott says, do something about the capitalist corrupting people and it won't matter if the politicians can become corrupted or not. Accurate. It's the Rocketeer says, well, it's nice to see billionaires give back to small businesses like senators. That's very funny. JP says, I'm also your mother's fave. Thank you very much. I appreciate my genius being called out. Delano says, do you think the girl on the plane is Virginia G? Oh, I haven't seen those pictures, so I don't know. Alexander Hamilton says, do you think Democratic leadership does enough to reduce drug deaths and usage across large cities? Absolutely, 100%. The Democratic Party is better at reducing drug deaths than the Republican Party. 312 MQ says, what do you think of Trump restricting states stopping AI? It is a terrible policy. The Trump administration gets a ton of money from the AI lobby, and so obviously they're going to be against regulating AI. Yeah, it's fucking stupid as hell. It is stupid. I just fucking can't with this shit anymore. You know, it's sometimes you just have to be like he's stupid. What he's doing is stupid. It's stupid, and it's gonna be bad for Americans. Okay, Teddy Shankman says, where would you say you are on the political spectrum? Liberal, socialist, etc. I call myself a progressive Democrat. I have been told that that is very similar to Democratic Socialist, but I still prefer progressive Democrat. I peaked in the 5th grade says, if the Republicans are billionaire shills, then why are people fleeing blue states for red ones? You know, I peaked in 5th grade. It's an interesting question because the first part of the question has absolutely nothing to do with the second part of the question. Actually, you know, I can see a thin connection there. The reason why people are fleeing blue states for red ones is because blue states are more expensive, and we are currently suffering through a cost of living crisis that is the fault entirely of Trump and the Republican Party. If you would like me to connect those dots for you, I peaked in 5th grade. I will be happy to. Sophia says, because abortion kills a baby, I think whether we should legalize it should depend on the outcome of it. So I'm not really sure what that means, Sophia. Did I miss another comment of yours? Because where we left off our conversation on abortion, Sophia, was that you were saying that the point is not to stop all abortions, but to communicate that it is wrong and to hold people accountable who do it. And then I gave you a whole responses to that, you know, and I asked you a couple of questions that I would love for you to respond to. Ant Chillin says, how realistic would it be for universal basic income in fighting the homelessness crisis? I think it would be hugely instrumental. Absolutely. Enzo says, also a question, where do you get your sources from? I try reading or watching unbiased news. So where to get your news? The answer is number one, a bunch of different sources so that you can avoid bias. And number two, you need to avoid right-wing media because right-wing media has been proven time and time again to be the least accurate kind of news that there is. So Fox News, OAN, Breitbart, the Daily Wire, like that, they have Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, all of them have been proven to be less accurate than every other kind of news that is out there. Sophia says, for the hypothetical, I think both options can coexist. Like we expand support while banning it. Okay, Sophia, I hear you on that, but I still would like to know, do you think it's more important that we communicate that abortion is wrong by making it illegal, or do you think it's more important that we have fewer abortions in America? If you had to pick one to be your main priority, which one would it be? Delano says, what's your reaction to states dropping their support for RCV because it's too complex? Can you let me know what RCV stands for? I don't remember. Alfie says, I would say the extreme left and right media are equally as untrustworthy. Congratulations, Alfie, you're out of here. I am done with your bullshits. Okay. Space Plum says, this is just the Sophia show now. It is not. How dare you? How dare you, Space Plum? Missy Lane says, what's worse, Andrew Cuomo presidency or a Hakeem Jeffries presidency? I'd say Cuomo, but, you know, it's a pretty close game. Okay. Alexander Hamilton says he didn't ask about Republicans. I was asking if the drug usage seen in major cities is handled well. I mean, it's a big problem, Alexander Hamilton. And so, yeah, you say the drug usage in big cities. I say the drug usage in Appalachia, which is generally governed by Republicans. Ranked choice voting. Gotcha. Yes, yes, yes. States dropping their support for ranked choice voting because it's too complicated. I didn't know that states were dropping their support for ranked choice voting. The last I heard was that the Democratic Party was thinking about using it for their primaries. So yeah, I'm just that is new information to me. Teddy Shankman says, "Is it true that Obama had a higher deportation rate than Trump?" I don't think that that's accurate, Teddy Shankman. I believe that that is a cherry pick statistic. I think that you need to look at the fact that Obama was a two-term president versus Trump's one. I also think you need to look at those specific deportations because there's a difference between Obama deporting people who are criminals and the Trump administration deporting people that they do not like, just any brown person. I think there's a difference between Obama deporting people who are criminals and the Trump administration removing children from their families and then losing them so that now we have like 1,000+ orphans in this country who don't know where their parents are. Yeah, enabling ICE, tripling their budget, alligator Alcatraz, deporting people to Venezuela and other nightmare regions that are not their country of origin. Like, there is a massive difference between the deportation policies of Democrats and Republicans. Schnabosis says that was Biden, wasn't it? What was Biden? Alexander Hamilton says going to Seattle, Portland, and LA is depressing to see. It feels like not enough is done. I completely agree, Alexander Hamilton. Completely agree. Not enough is done, but there are things that make this problem really difficult to solve. Not the least of which being that people who have a lot of money are keeping it from being solved. Okay, Anistropic Reaction says, I'm convinced Trump administration is trafficking human beings. I wouldn't be surprised. Enzo says, what's your opinion on the invading Mexico and stopping the cartel? I mean, it's just bad policy. It's we'd be essentially starting a war with Mexico. It's just stupid, Sorry, I'm sorry that so many of my answers to you, Enzo, have just devolved into it's stupid, but I just can't with Trump's bullshit sometimes, Okay, let's see here. Vicky Howard says Biden lost lots of kids. That is misinformation, Vicky. That is inaccurate. Sophia says, I think the first option listed, lowering the number of abortions, is top priority, but we should ban it too. Okay, so Sophia, this is where, I think it's really important to just establish our priorities, because the way that you were talking about communicating that abortion is bad by making it illegal almost made it sound like you cared more about that than actually decreasing the number of abortions. So to that, I would also ask you about logistical issues with banning abortion. Like, are you aware of the women who have died because of these abortion bans in red states? Sophia, let me know what you think about that. ER says, what do you think about Fuentes? Fuentes is a self-described misogynist and racist. He is a self-described schnazi. I'm not calling him that. He is calling himself that. He went on Piers Morgan recently and said that he's straight, but that he finds women difficult to be around and that he's never had sex. So while I'm not going to judge somebody for being a virgin, I think it is really strange that the manosphere is hyping up this dude for that reason. So yeah, he's a liar, he's a grifter, he's a hate monger, he's a bad guy. I could not say more. There aren't enough negative words in the dictionary for me to adequately describe Nick Fuentes. Clark B. Babin says, this whole page is a lie. Can you tell me one thing that I have said that has been inaccurate? Clark, let me know. Zachary says, do you think in cities where citizens want to see the government do more, do you think the money is there? So the money is there, but it's difficult because people can travel freely between states in America. Sometimes certain states can get taken advantage of for their government programs. So, these programs would have a lot easier time being funded through federal programs, but they still can be funded through, state programs. It's just harder, That's why we have better public education in California, is because we have a progressive tax structure here, and we tax rich people more than they do in the state of Texas. Okay, let's see here. Sophia says, but every state has the life of the mother exception, so women aren't dying from not having abortions. So, Sophia, but women have died, though. Like, I can think of at least 5 that have died because of these abortion restrictions. You say that every state has the life of the mother exception, but not every state does, or at least they're not being clear enough in their legislating of it. Do you also believe in exceptions for rape and incest? Or do you believe that abortion is wrong? Abortion is only appropriate if it is saving the life of the mother. Let me know. Thank you, Alexander Hamilton. ER says hookup culture. I don't know what that means. Alexander Hamilton says, true, that's a very valid point. It's a very complicated issue with many factors. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander Hamilton. Enzo says, I've been into politics since I was 14. Wow. God damn. That is great, man. And good kudos on you, man. I was way more interested in movies and, doing stupid jokes with my buddies and watching The Simpsons than I was able to pay attention to politics back then. My biggest dream is to become a politician and do good. I love that for you, Enzo, and I hope that you're able to accomplish that. Righty. ER says, how is Fuentes a grifter? So everybody that peddles right-wing misinformation on social media, that gets all of their money from people, like buying their vitamin supplements and buying their hats and shirts and shit like that. They're, and also taking money from billionaires who are astroturfing them or the Russian government. Like, they're doing this for money. They're lying to you for money. They are grifting. CTA Logger says, this guy has cat lady takes. That is inaccurate. And also, speaking of cat ladies, I fucked your mom. Okay, Sophia says, yes, I believe the only exception for abortion should be the life of the mother. Okay. So again, I would ask you, have you heard about the women that have died because of these abortion bans? Do you think that is a bad thing? Can you acknowledge that it is at least a thing that has happened? Antic says, cat lady is a compliment. I mean, his mom was great. So ER says, but I mean, he's been saying this for years, even before he was making money. Yeah, I'm sure that some of his really shitty, hateful beliefs are valid, but yeah, I don't know what else I can say about that. Kimberlina says, define life of the mother. Does that include mental health? Oh, interesting, Kimberlina. I mean, obviously, I don't think that people on the right would believe that. It's kind of a moot question for me because I'm pro-choice. Fortnite Lifehack says, ooh, what if they implement a large sales tax on abortion? I mean, you're just replacing one war on the poor with a different war on the poor. Raven Elize says, Alex Jones believes his own grift, but still a grift. All right, yeah, I agree with Raven. Max W says, I'm pretty sure grifting is when you change your takes based off of who's in office. I don't really agree with that. Max Jay says, thoughts on James Tallarico? I like James Tallarico. I think he's great. Kimberlina says, tariff abortions. Yeah, it's just funny. Fortnite Life has says abortion stamps. That is you guys got me. You guys got me good. Okay, Misty Lane says, if you want to lower abortion, in the words of JD Vance, you should try and incentivize families and make the prospect of having a family more appealing. And the thing JD Vance won't tell you is how you do that is social safety nets. That is accurate, Misty Lane. JP says the first 3 Google results show every state allows life of the mother by doctor or administrative judgment, but women have also died. That is accurate, JP. All right, CJ says, what does it take for Trump to get impeached? Has he not done enough? So the thing that it would take, CJ, is for us to replace the Republicans in Congress with Democrats. Because here's the problem, CJ, and I want to make this 100% clear to everybody watching, is that if the president does impeachable things, they should get impeached regardless of which political party they are in. And I know we have not seen this happen yet. But the reason why I vote for Democrats is because I believe that they will do that. They're the ones that threw fucking Al Franken under the bus just because, he sexually harassed a lady on an army base. I don't mean just as though sexual harassment is not a big deal. But I'm just saying, like, in comparison to what Trump has done and not getting thrown under the bus by his political party. So, yeah, the Republican Party has proven time and time again that they are for party over country. And so they are willfully ignoring the impeachable things that Donald Trump is currently doing. So, if we want to impeach him, we have to win Democrats the midterms. Zachary says, my local government evading taxes, not investing in infrastructure, insider information. I don't know what that means. SWAT says Al Franken likes Ted Cruz the most. People like Ted Cruz and he hates Ted Cruz. That is accurate. Not Sandy says, not a very hot take. Not a very hot take. Every economic system doesn't work in practice, but sounds good on paper. I suppose I kind of agree with that. Tracy Lott says, have you forgotten how creepy Biden was? The creepy videos of him and children. Yeah, Biden was weird, but I'm not really saying that Biden is perfect. He's just better, There's no pictures of him with that guy with the island, if you get my meaning, Tracy. ER says, what do you think of Trump putting a pause on third world migration? I think it is rich that he's doing that, where he is claiming that there are all these problems that are being caused by immigration. And yet, he is only stopping brown people immigrating. So it's like, if you're rich and you're white, then you being a migrant doesn't cause the same problems as brown people being migrants. Like, seems pretty nakedly racist to me. Not Sandy, seems like every past president had something weird with children. No, I mean, Obama didn't. Absolutely not. And yeah, Biden was weird and he's very touchy-feely, but, I haven't seen anything substantive that he ever did anything, ER says, well, I mean, they're the ones from all the third world countries. ER, it's a little late in the day. It's a little late in the live stream for me to get fully into the things that are wrong with that comment. I guess I would ask you, can you connect the dots? Can you figure out why those countries are poorer? And I'll give you a hint. It's not because those people are worse. All right. Jacob Lewis says, how do you feel about the AfD rising in Germany? It's concerning. You don't want far-right parties emerging in Germany and Japan for obvious reasons. JJ Sells Houses says, are you for socialism or democracy? Genuine question. Those are not mutually exclusive. We currently have socialism in America right now and democracy. Public schools, paved roads, the military, those are all socialism. Sophia says, I think the way the life of the mother exceptions are written are sometimes too narrow. I completely agree with that, Sophia. And, I would argue that those abortion bans were written that way because they wanted that to happen. I think they wanted doctors to be scared, So I see Republican politicians doing that, and it makes me really suspicious of their motivations. Okay. I peaked in 5th grade says, there's no way you just said socialism is when government. I mean, I don't think I did, but I think I said we have socialism here in America. So I peaked in 5th grade. I think maybe you are watching an old stream or something. Your favorite Democrat, that is accurate. Sophia does not believe in that. And I strongly disagree with Sophia on that. JJ Sells Houses says, disagree with you. The core of most socialist countries would directly reflect within the healthcare. I don't know what that means by would directly reflect within the healthcare. But there's never been a socialist country. Every country that has called themselves socialist or communist have actually been authoritarian. Socialism is just when the government does the program. So, universal healthcare is government-run healthcare. Anistropic Reaction says, United States could be a third world country given the economic and international policy currently. No arguments here. ER says, don't think those words left my mouth so because politicians destroyed their countries. No, I didn't say that you were saying that, ER. I'm just saying that that's not what happened. You know what, everybody? I love that we still have activity going on the live stream right now, but I am definitely losing steam. Brian Lou KY says, let's hear your take on Tim Walz and the multi-billion-dollar Medicare scam. So I think it's weird that we're calling that the Tim Walz Medicare scam when Tim Walz didn't have anything to do with it. There's no evidence that he allowed it to happen through either, corruption or incompetence. The person in charge of it was a white dude, and yet we're still calling it like the Somali Medicare scam. So it's like, so what I don't know where you're getting at, my guy. Enzo says, what's your opinion on Americans slowly losing their freedom and turning into an authoritarian? I'm against it, Enzo. I think you probably know that. And yeah, I think, we can stop it. We currently are. Genetic Talk says, but you always lose steam at 3:30. Yeah, sometimes I push through to do an hour and a half, but yeah, I don't know if I can do that today. All right, everybody. Just wanted to let you know that if you would like to support the live stream financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from. You can also become super fans on TikTok, subscribers on Twitch, and you can send gifts on all the various channels. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber and you want to help me out financially without costing any money at all, you can subscribe to my Twitch using your Amazon Prime. I get $2. It costs you $0. Special thanks to my Twitch subscribers, Triska, Lauren, and Kazelo, I think his name is. And my super fans on TikTok, Susie, Sean, Dean, and Hot Sauce. And my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. How is what spelled, Jacob? Gamergoon, Democrats aren't trash. And also, but you know it was trash? Your mama's pussy. Kazelo. I think it's Kazaeelo. Let's see here. Your favorite Democrat? We are not going to throw shade at people who are here asking questions in good faith and engaging in good faith. Sophia has different beliefs than you and I. And while I think we can disagree with the things that the politicians that she has voted for have enabled, I think that this is potentially a person that we can convince, that the politicians she is voting for do not have her best interests in mind. Oh, Jacob Lewis says, what's your stance on Israel? I am against the government of Israel. I'm against the Netanyahu government. I am for the people. Okay, I have potentially jury duty next week, you guys. And so it is likely that my schedule will change next week. Keep an eye on my TikTok schedule or my Twitch schedule or my schedule on my website if you want more info on when I'll potentially be streaming. But there's a good chance that I just won't be streaming next week. I may pop in at odd times instead of my regularly scheduled programs. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, then please shoot me an email. I am happy to engage with people. You can DM me. You can hit me up on my Discord. I want to be a resource for you guys to be better informed and better involved in politics. So if I can do that, I want to. So use me, abuse me, use me until I am all used up. I love the Discord as a way to get in touch, but also as a way to form community with other people who are fans of the show, and also as a place where I have great recommendations for books and podcasts, and also organizations that you should 100% be donating your time and money to. These people need these organizations need people just like you. So if you're not doing any work, do a little work. See what you might like it. Oh, yay. Your favorite Democrat, let's not start fights, okay? Sophia has been nothing but cordial to us, so we're going to continue to engage with her. ER says, do you think that because politicians made one country worse, we shouldn't let those people in? Do I think that because politicians made a country worse, that we shouldn't let those people in? No, I do not believe that just because politicians made a country worse, that we shouldn't let the people who live in that country into this country. Thank you for your question. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here, for all of the gifts, the likes, the shares, and whatnot. Have a great weekend, everybody. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys when I see you, because I don't know. I got jury duty coming up next week, so I'm not really sure when I'll be streaming next time. But just, I guess, watch this space and have a great weekend. And I will see you guys later. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.